Have you ever worked your butt off in practice to finally nail the song that you're working on, only to have it come out completely different in performance? If you are nodding your head, this video is for you. I am Kim from thatsweetraw.com. If we haven't met before, hi. And I've been having this conversation a lot with students, and then again this last weekend in a group coaching call, which is this idea of translating what we do in the practice room into performance and the challenges and the emotions that come with that. And this story is as old as time. So firstly, you are definitely not alone. And your experience might have been that high note that was finally free and easy in practice then feels tight and strangled in performance. It might be that you ran out of breath on lines that had finally become a breeze in practice. Or that note that you'd gotten to feel more steady and solid then became shaky or brittle when you were in performance. And when this happens, this spiral of thoughts start kind of rushing in, like, what has gone wrong? Did I just not practice hard enough? Can my voice actually not do what I thought that it had finally learned how to do? Am I just not cut out to perform? Maybe I need to keep my voice to myself and just enjoy it for myself. So the second guessing kind of goes on overdrive, and all of these panicked ideas can fly around your head if you feel like you have failed or you've tanked a performance. And I just want to interject here and say that it's almost always not as bad as you think. And often the audience isn't going to notice the mistakes that you do, because you have this very clear vision of what is right or what it is that you want and how you want to express it. But they've never seen that blueprint. They don't know what right looks like. They're just experiencing what it is that you're giving them in that moment. But even if you are adamant that it was a complete catastrophe, none of those thoughts that I was talking about are true. So what is true? The truth is that you can sing that song in the way that you wanted to in practice. And you are learning to be able to translate that into performance. And I want you to think about this. You cannot practice performing without performing, without having other eyeballs on you, without putting yourself in that very specific scenario. So even though the song might be the same, the context is hugely different, and the thoughts you have about it are hugely different. So often we allow ourselves to treat the practice room as the training ground, which is great. This is where we hash out mistakes, we're allowed to learn, we're allowed to problem solve and improve. But the stage, well, that is where it better all go right. That's when the stakes are high. That's when we are supposed to show what we have achieved in practice, how we have improved. And I want to interject here and say, some of you also feel this way about your lessons, that you have to have shown improvement when you come to the next lesson. And I want to say, your teacher's job is to support you where you are at, to meet you where you are at. Please don't put pressure on yourself to improve every single lesson. I know that's what you want, but your teacher is not there to judge how much you have improved or not, okay? I just quickly wanted to interject there. So, going back to practice and performance, we've now thrown ourselves into an entirely new context, which includes other people. So then we are vulnerable to judgment, criticism, rejection, perceived embarrassment. And we've doubled the pressure by changing our expectations. And yes, when we are practicing, particularly deep technical practice, we are trying to train in these new habits. We are building new neural pathways, showing our body how to operate more efficiently, how to express in very certain ways, how to eliminate strain. But expecting those to magically work for us when we are under pressure or our nervous system is having a complete meltdown, when we're full of adrenaline and our thoughts are spinning about what everyone is thinking about our voice, that's not fair. That is completely different, right? So I hope that is kind of a sigh of relief already in itself, acknowledging that it's a completely different context and we feel completely different about it. So what can we do instead to help ourselves to have better quality performances and integrate what it is that we have worked on in practice into these new performance contexts or situations? So what I hope comes out of this video, the reason that I created it, is I want you to be able to give yourself the best chance of having a performance that you feel really good about. So here are 4 tips that I have in order to support you in that. Number 1, recognize that while you might be an intermediate or advanced singer, that you can still be a beginner performer or even a beginner singer of certain styles or in certain vocal qualities, belting for example, or in certain situations. So you might, for example, feel like you're a pro at singing in a recording studio, but then live gigs are an entirely different kettle of fish. It feels like a new experience and something that makes you feel kind of more nervous. It puts you on the spot a little bit more. You notice that you feel different in that situation. Can you allow yourself to get better at that over time? Acknowledge that it is new. And it might be that the way that you're showing up is new. So you might have performed quite a lot, but the way that you've done it is thinking about technical delivery. You feel almost armored up a little bit. You're in control, right? But now you might start to want to show some more genuine vulnerability and express yourself a little bit more. You might be trying to take your hands off the wheel when it comes to logically planning out the way you want to sing something. And so if you're veering in a new direction, can you then allow yourself to be a beginner in that context, in that new way of showing up? Number 2. Alter your intentions and your expectations accordingly. So something that tends to happen when people are going into performance is they set an intention or an expectation that might actually put more pressure on the situation. For example, if you are nervous about a performance, please don't set your intention as having fun. Like there's going to be a lot of sensation in your body. You're going to have a lot of adrenaline. There's going to be questions flying through your head. You're going to be worried about how you're perceived. None of that is actually that fun. Fun comes with our capacity to experience these, our comfort level with these things. But trying to expect that you're going to have fun when it's super new and you have this sort of performance anxiety is super unfair. Same as if you are worried about hitting a certain high note, please don't then have the expectation that you're going to go in there and you're going to let go of control. That feels really unsafe. If you are someone who shrinks at the thought of being judged, then please don't go in there with the intention that you are going to bare your soul for all to see. So can you instead set an expectation that the most anxious and insecure part of yourself can get behind, that they would feel comfortable with this? So this actually means that you're probably going to see it as dumbing it down or having this really low barrier to entry. Maybe it's that you're simply just getting up there and delivering the song. Maybe it's aiming to not beat yourself up for any mistakes that you hear or that you make. Maybe it's that you usually would beat yourself up for having this shaky hand holding the microphone, but you decide that you're not going to make that mean that you're a bad singer, that you're not going to make that mean something about your worthiness as you show up on stage. Maybe it's about following through with your breath on lines that you know that you tend to hold it in or hold it back. Maybe it's about bringing 5% more attitude and expression than you did in your last performance. or getting up the courage to ask for what it is that you need from the sound guy, from band members, or an accompanist, or a producer. So in this learning phase of performance, and I want to say if you have been performing for years, but it feels like you've been really pushing through and gritting your teeth through it, and you are cultivating a new experience with performance that is more fun or more nourishing, this is still new. Treat it as new. So in this learning phase, your aim is to build trust, okay, and help yourself feel as safe as possible with every decision that is within your control. There is a lot that is outside of our control, but our expectations of ourselves, how we treat ourselves, those things are within our control. They take a little bit of kind of catching and noticing and choosing again. But those are the things that we can control, and those are the things that we should endeavor to make more self-honoring choices around. Number 3, where possible, build your tolerance for vulnerability and visibility by stretching into those spaces in practice. So obviously we can't recreate a performance without performing, but you can add elements into your practice that add some friction or some kind of nervous energy for you. So it might be that you record yourself and you feel that little bit of friction. It could be adding video into the practice. You're videoing yourself, and maybe that brings some vulnerability for you, or that inner critic starts to come to life because you are watching yourself, judging the way that your mouth moves, all of that kind of thing. Maybe it's as simple as having somebody at home in the next room that you know can hear you. Maybe it brings that kind of nervousness alive for you. So you're building this capacity to experience nervousness and not demonize it, and just allow the sensations that come up while you are in practice in some way. And then when it comes to performance, can you take smaller steps in building this capacity for vulnerability, visibility, sensation, experience of nervousness, or, our own inner critic, our own judgment? So can you sing in front of somebody that you trust first, for example? I mean, a lot of us just throw ourselves into these really high stakes, or what we see as high stakes performances like an audition, without taking smaller steps first. And I think that we do that because we're high achievers and we think that's the way that we should get used to it and throw ourselves in the deep end. We don't need to do that. We can do this in a more kind way to ourselves, a more compassionate way. So in terms of singing in front of someone that you trust first, even within that, you can make more self-honoring choices or do it in smaller steps. So I had a student who wanted to be able to sing in front of her husband, but she felt really nervous and she would kind of burst into nervous giggles when she did it. So she first sang in front of him in another room. He wasn't allowed to be in the same room as her. Then they were in the same room, but she wasn't looking at him, so she had her back turned to him. And then finally she was able to sing while facing him. But these sorts of things are really helpful. I know that it feels like you might be babying yourself, but as I said, we need to build trust and build in a sense of safety as we expand our capacity for this visibility and this vulnerability. And even within that, you might then ask them not to provide feedback. That might feel safer for you, so that you're not having to worry about having to receive criticism or receive judgment after the fact as well. And then in terms of situations, you might decide that you then go out and sing at karaoke, which feels kind of a little bit more lighthearted or low stakes. Then it might turn into an open mic, and you might sing covers before you sing your own songs if you write original music, and then doing things that feel a little bit more intense, like an audition. And number 4, this is the aftermath. Evaluate with compassion. So afterwards, notice what it is that you did in a performance that differed from what you did and experienced in practice. So did you experience more tension? Did you oversing? Did you hold your breath? Did you barely open your mouth? And think about what it is that you might be trying to get out of doing that. And a lot of this is subconscious, actually. But is it that you feel like you needed to impress the audience? Is it that you felt like you were attempting to hide a little bit or adding more effort because you didn't trust that that high note would come out? Is it that you felt really out of control, so what you were doing was maybe trying to hold on to some control? And then I want you to recognize it as a protective mechanism. So there is a part of you who doesn't feel 100% safe in that context with the level of vulnerability and visibility and perceived risk that comes with performance. It doesn't feel safe yet. You are building that. Remember that this is a learning. You're having to practice performing in the real context, in performing itself. And in the aftermath, if it goes 60 to 70% as well as it did in practice, I want you to celebrate yourself. That is a huge win because you are dealing with a vastly different physical and emotional situation and experience. So there is a lot more sensation in your body. There's a lot more inner noise, often criticism or fear or perfectionism, that you are having to navigate and deal with. And so 60 to 70% as solid as it was in the practice room is actually amazing. So I hope this video helped you to understand and have compassion for yourself when it comes to translating or taking a song from the practice room onto the stage or into a performance. I would love for you to see every performance as this opportunity to build your capacity for discomfort, for experiencing sensation, for navigating visibility and vulnerability, instead of as the moment where everything better go right, otherwise your self-worth plummets. Because if we keep pushing ourselves into performances with these sky-high expectations and beat ourselves up for our perceived failures afterwards, we actually don't build trust with ourselves. We erode trust with ourselves. And our performances can't improve, and our experiences of them cannot feel better. So it might seem like this is the slow road to do it with this level of intention and compassion. But trust me, it actually speeds up the whole process, and it also makes it lighter and more enjoyable. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or reflections that you would like to share, please leave a comment. I absolutely love hearing how these videos land for you. And remember to subscribe so that you find out about the next one that I'm doing. And if you know someone that this would be really supportive for, that they might need to hear this, please share it with them. I want to support as many singers with this as humanly possible and spread this message far and wide if we can as a community. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. I hope that you have a beautiful week and that this starts to transform the way that you move songs from practice into performance contexts. Take care, and I'll see you next time.